Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
For the Threads of Enlightenment, guys, you know this is my favorite space right here. I get to welcome our guest, Catherine. She's coming with a couple of things that I deem very expensive. One, time. Whoa, what a powerful commodity that many of us have not learned how to value her, how to respect and honor her. We misuse her, most of us, because we don't understand who she is and how she plays an important part in our life. I want to challenge you guys to honor her, and she'll teach you much. The other is the journey. The journey. Wow, what a powerful creator. It has created the individual that is here before us, and we are honored, and we want to take the time to give her that honor and say thank you for coming and spending such expensive commodities here with us at Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you so much, Catherine, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you for having me.
It is an honor. My question, as I always like to ask my guests, how do you serve mankind? And my audience know the reason why I ask this question, because I want them to get out of their mindset that it's all about them. It's about us, all of us. How do you serve mankind?
I love that question. Through my work as a Reiki practitioner, a yoga instructor, and I also have backgrounds with sound healing, meditation, crystals, and essential oils. But prior to when we started recording, you were talking about the trauma that we all experience to come into this world, and then how we kind of, through that journey, and we build up who we are through that experience. I think also through other experiences in my life, using what I've learned in those is also a way that I serve others, right? I think sometimes when we go through really difficult experiences, we learn how to be more gracious. We learn how to be more compassionate. We learn how to be more empathetic. And that's something that you can use any moment of any day. And I think if we all used a bit more of that day in and day out, I think it could help to make the world a much better, more loving place.
I think that's the key to all this mess. There's a scripture that says, because again, I grew up in the church, it says to love your neighbor as you love yourself. A lot of people don't like themselves. Yeah. And that's why we're seeing the world the way it is, because if you love your neighbor, you will understand what it is to honor someone else and you honor yourself. And so if you don't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor. That's why we are in where we're at. So one of the customs that we do here at Threads of Enlightenment is jump in this time machine. And we are going to revisit certain spaces that I tell people that we get a chance to live and experience while we are here on this planet for a period of time. We call the period of time years. We are sitting in this house that we were brought into, that they told us that these two people are our mom and dad. And so we are in this science lab. I tell people, I call it a lab once in a while, because that's pretty much what it is. Mom and dad, they are seeing the world through their trauma, and whatever trauma that is. And so they are skewed on their belief system. Some of us are lucky to get parents that are awake, but most of us don't. And we have the sleeping parents that are going to love us anyway through their trauma, and they are going to deposit data into us, information. How was your family unit like?
So my parents were both active duty military when I was born. And so I think also going to the question of service, I think I witnessed a lot of, like, service is what we're all called to in different ways. Probably when I turned, was it 10 or 11, both my parents retired. So that was also a big shift to be able to have more of their time. As you said, right? That's a gift. That is a gift that we give to each other.
Yeah.
But it was always about, helping the neighbors, or we used to visit a nursing home, or, cleaning up here, cleaning up there. Like, I do think service was instilled not only in their jobs, but in also little ways around, the house or outside of the house. But I don't think I necessarily recognized it at the time as a child, right? It was just kind of like, oh, it's what they're telling us to do. And I think as I grew older,
Yeah.
I started to realize, like, oh, they were onto something. They were onto something with that.
Isn't it wonderful how that is?
Yes,
So,
it is. Like they know that they.
yeah, because, I told my sons, I said, there's a couple of teachers you're going to have in life. There's the parents. Of course, you have your outside models, your school, your teachers, your friends, and all those different things. But all of those are teachers. Nature is a teacher. And I said, all those teachers are trying to prepare you for this one major teacher. If you're gonna ignore me and all that stuff, that's fine. If you're gonna ignore everyone, but there's this teacher, one teacher coming in the back, and she don't care how handsome you look. She don't care how beautiful you are. But when she's finished with you, boy, either you will break and surrender, or she will turn you up and twist you into things that you never thought is possible. But she's coming. So here you are, this young buck has mom and dad, great military, and I know how military family are. That's kind of a self-explanatory thing right there as to how the house functions. Order, and on top of order. And so here you are in this
Yes.
mix of military from both sides as you're seeing the wisdom of mom and dad. How did you receive all of that? Did you rebel? What
No.
was your response to that?
I
You wouldn't
wasn't
even try,
rebellious.
girl.
No, I'm not the smartest, but I was too smart for that. I think also when you grow up in that, you don't recognize necessarily that it's different from, you know,
Yeah,
it was your norm. And,
yeah,
it wasn't until I got older that I realized, like, oh, other parents are different with their kids. I even tell people my mom is Black, my dad is white. And so I also thought that was very normal, right? Everybody's
yeah,
everybody's family looks different like that. And then as I got older, I was like, oh no, it's not that common. So I think there were a lot of things where it felt like we were a little special, or,
yeah,
a little different. I think with though there was the order, I think especially my mom was, because I'm the only girl in the family. I have two older brothers. She was, I think, really good about understanding, like, one, being really supportive, being supportive. Not to say my brothers and my dad weren't, but my mom in particular was especially supportive of, just ideas I would get, or she would kind of bring me along, right, when she wanted to try something new, as well as like just experimenting, trying things. So when I wanted to stop eating meat, she said, okay, or when we would be cooking things, right, it's like she'd say, like, oh, come along and try this with me. So I think even just with all the order, there was still this kind of part of her, I think in particular, still had a little bit, I don't know that she would describe herself as a free spirit, but this little bit of her that was kind
yeah,
of like, okay, there's this bigger world, there's more to learn. So learning was also such a big thing in the household. And I think she always really pushed me for that because, for her, it was always, being smart can take you really far in life. And I think
yeah,
she never wanted me to feel like I wasn't that, or even just seeing her, as a Marine and, male Marines, reporting to her, for example, it was never that, oh, a woman can't speak up for herself or that a woman doesn't have a voice. And even though there were times in my life where I didn't necessarily feel that, she always set that standard, of like, you can command a room, you can set
yeah,
boundaries. No is a complete sentence. And so I think that, again, now looking back, I wish I had appreciated it at the time. It took me a little longer to
yeah.
took
We
me
never
maybe a
did.
little bit longer to kind of to tap into those in myself. But I think she always did exemplify that as well, in addition, right, to those other kind of, things about order and rules and service that we saw in the family. And faith was also very big.
Yeah, it's an awesome combination of great things that was being instilled in you as a young individual. And as you said, most of us in retrospect, and that's one of the reasons why I always take people back, because sometimes we go back into our memories and we were able to excavate additional information that we had not seen before and learn to appreciate them because in fact they did create us, and we will walk with elements of it all through our lives while we're here on this planet. And so, um, mom and dad do play a great deal in our lives. So here you are, you get a chance to experience all of these powerful tools within one's life as you're moving through life and you're growing up, as they say, and you're about to, spread your wings a little further out than just the house. That means we're heading into another system that we reside there for a few years, and that other system also programs us, and we call that system school. How was school per se? You're dealing with high school and stuff like that, and how did you relate to those others, having all of those powerful things being instilled within you from mom and dad? Mom showing you a little more of the explorer side of a being, even though you have orders and the strictness, but also you said something that I think is very important that people learn, and we usually take us sometimes boundaries. Mom was able to show you some stuff, some insights as to that. What was your relationship like in that second phase of our growing up, if you will, in that space of called school? What was our relationship there to others?
So I think for the most part academically, I did well in school. So, I will not say I was a straight A student, but I always did pretty well in school, or was, sometimes in like the honors or advanced courses. I think sometimes though, looking back, I think I always tried to be really kind to people. I don't know. I think there were a lot of times though where I felt maybe a little left out, or like I didn't necessarily always relate to everyone. I'm I'm not quite necessarily sure why. So yeah, so it was like I did really well in school, but I think there was maybe still part of me that I don't know if I was still kind of uncovering parts of myself, or, I mean, of course, as I grew older, I think it also became easier for me to have a little bit more discernment about who actually was a friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? Versus just a classmate or an
Yeah.
acquaintance. Because I do feel like people throw the term friend around very loosely. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody is your friend. Some people you just
Yeah.
happen to know, right? Some people you happen to have a class with. Um, and then I think, especially as I said, as I got older, that became a bit easier to discern, right? Who really supports you, who's really for you, right? Who really, even if you have maybe different interests, right, is still there for you. And I
Yeah.
think and hope I got better with that as I got into high school and college, and, past college, my young adult life
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. The book of Proverbs, again, I tell people I grew up in the church. The book of Proverbs was written by an individual who's supposed to be the wisest man on the earth. And he talked a lot about friends, types of friends and friendship. And I remember using that book to educate my sons as to who friends are and the types of friends that are out there, and to always be mindful to identify who is who. And as you identify who is who, life should be a little less painful. But there's always a Judas inside the mix because we saw a Judas giving Jesus Christ a kiss and sold him out. So there's always one
Yes.
in there
Always,
that
always.
will challenge their friendship and take it to the next level. And so here you are, and you mentioned that you were heading into college and all of the discernments and the wisdom that you gained. Now, when you were heading into that direction, again, we're still in this arena of programming. The educational programming system is a pretty long one in our lifestyle, if in our life, when you come to think about it, and then we go into the professional realm and so forth. But as a young individual, formative time, we spend most of that within the educational system, home, church, stuff like that. So as you're heading towards the higher form of education, as they say, which field did you pick, Catherine, and why did you pick that field of study when you were heading out, if you will, to become an independent individual, quote unquote, from mom and dad, which is never true, but we just say it because it sounds good. As you're heading in that direction, what field of study and why did you pick it?
Yes. So I majored in history in undergrad and I minored in anthropology. And where I went to school, like within history, there are of course different buckets. So I chose social history. I happened to just take a class at the end of my freshman year. In high school, I don't think they teach history very well, but in college, I was just like on the edge of my seat in the way that this professor taught the class. And I just made up my
Yeah.
mind. I said, oh, yeah, this is what I want to study. And I remember it actually, my dad and I argued a bit about this because, he was like, why don't you study, maybe American history, right? Or different other types of history. And I said, because here with social history, you're learning about the experiences of people, right? I think from my experience, so often when history is taught, you don't learn about what happens to the people on the ground, right? They always say history is written by the winner, quote unquote winner. But when you learn about the experiences of other people, you tend to find that, in my experience, there's commonalities, right? History really does keep repeating itself, just with different places and people and at different times. But it was fascinating for me to learn about all of these different experiences and places and historical events through the lens of, yes, the broader history, but also sometimes through individuals and what it was, like for people back then, because our stories are important. And I minored in anthropology as well because I was, just fascinated about learning about other cultures, right? Or how things impact different cultures. So I think there was a big focus more so on people because we're the ones who make everything work. We're the ones who make everything run. And, just
Yeah.
as you're over here asking me about my story, other people's stories are important too, or again, how things impact them. That makes up so much of what happens in this world as well, right? Things that may happen to one
Yeah.
person, it can, right, lead to the trajectory of their life. So that's what I studied. And I didn't necessarily have an idea of what I wanted to do with that degree, which I think was also very different from a lot of my classmates. I think where I went to school, there was a lot of people who were very high achievers, right? Sometimes came in knowing what they wanted to do for the rest of their life. And I did kind of feel like I don't know that yet, right? I was still figuring it out because I liked the classes and I wanted to take the classes. And sometimes I felt a little silly, that I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. But I don't regret it because I loved what I learned and I loved the time that I spent in those classes. And I
Hmm.
do feel like it expanded so much of my perspective of the world and just of other cultures and people.
And that's just as important as anything else. When one have that understanding of, I love history. I studied history. I had tons of books on that, and what I learned is that the reason why it keeps repeating itself because the needs of people are still the same. It's still the same. The needs are still the same. It's just different generations and so forth. But the basic needs is still the same: happiness with family and all the different things and whatever. And then you have a bunch of guys in there who are crazy enough to want power and they want to get this, and then they change everything, and then they start killing
Yes.
each other. And but it's the same thing over history because the need and the needs are the very same, just different people expressing the same thing. And so history is such
Hmm.
as a repetitive of man's crazy behavior. So here you are, you've
Yeah.
picked your field, you're out, and now that you are here exploring, actually, you're basically doing what mom has been teaching you all your life. Be an explorer, and you were in college just exploring, grabbing knowledge, and so forth. As you are now ushering into the other aspect of our life, we're now heading into that money making area, that they call our profession, and tell us that after we get that, remember, Catherine, you have to get the white picket fence with the husband, because right now we're still with the program. We are just following
Yes.
the programs, if you will. So, as you and I have been doing for a lot of our life, following the programs until that day, I call that day of visitation. When you were following the program that tells you that you need to go and get your job, which I don't believe we came here on this planet just to do a job and then die. That sounds kind of morbid, but that's how many
It does.
people have chosen to express their life and their time while they're here. I believe we are all put on this planet we have an assignment, and it's our destiny to find it. So here you are, you're moving through life, you're heading into the corporate world to be programmed there. What was your first assignment within that space, and how did it come about?
Yes. So I got a year-long fellowship at a nonprofit in DC that worked with the federal government. Like more specifically, a lot of times people think of the government as Congress, but no, the different agencies. So I actually got that through a program at my undergraduate institution. And so they set it up for, it was a year-long program. Essentially, it was almost like nonprofit consulting, but we, promoted good government, that there are a lot of these civil servants who are out here doing good work for the country.
Mhm.
And then that turned into a full-time job. I had thought when I graduated I wanted to do event planning, and so there were elements of event planning, maybe on a smaller scale, that I got to be involved with. And so then after that first year, I got hired on as a full-time employee, and was actually there at that job for about 5 years. But it was during that time that I really realized my interest in health and wellness, which I'd had for a while, that I really should pursue it, because I basically was talking about it all the time. And I was talking about it at work. I was talking about it at home. I was, had been thinking, maybe I should become a yoga instructor, right? Maybe I should get a degree in something. But I kept, saying kind of, like you're talking about, oh, but I have this job, like this comes 1st. And then life just kind of took a couple turns of events. Both of my dad's parents passed away at different points in 2012. And after being with my grandmother when she passed away, it, being around someone when they transition can be very significant and impactful, and traumatic in a way as well, even though I think she passed in the most beautiful way. But, still seeing the life literally come out of a person, really, I think, kind of gave me this charge to stop holding back on the things I wanted to do and to start taking those steps. So that actually pushed me to take my 200-hour yoga teacher certification, which was a transformative experience. And then I had all these plans to start teaching, and I was going to apply for my master's in nutrition. And then I got a diagnosis that I had a brain tumor. And then that was, its own kind of traumatic event that took me on an even different path, or a, slightly different path in the road, and really led me to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's amazing how, let me ask this question, where did you pick that up as far as health and wellness? How did it enter your being, if you can remember? What was the instant that caused that data to be lodged in you, and it just kept growing? Do you remember that?
So, and I always, whenever this comes up, I always tell people it was a series of events that I didn't realize
Always.
till I was till I was in my 20s. Like, kind of like the little path has been set up for me, and I just wasn't, I was clueless. When I was a kid, I kept getting sick when I would eat stuff. And so we found out, I lactose intolerance, but also I had E. coli. And then I wanted to stop eating meat. And so my mom said, okay, I'll do that with you. And I was very, very thin to begin with. So she said, keep eating fish because you're 10 years old. But that's when we also started, experimenting a lot more with food. And so it was more so like more dietary at first, but then I had also grown up dancing, and I had injured both my hips and had to have hip surgeries. And so then it was, kind of like, okay, you've been dancing all this time, and now you need to kind of learn more about your body, right? What does your body need? And then I had another injury and started seeing an acupuncturist. And so then it was more like this introduction into the world of energy, right? And energy medicine. So it was kind of like all these different scenarios where at the time I just thought, oh my gosh, my body is failing me. I can't do anything. I can't eat this. I can't eat that. I can't move like I want to. And looking back, I'm kind of like, I was learning that whole time. I just took it
Yeah.
as negative, because it was
Yeah.
painful, right? It was hard. It was hard for me to stop dancing. It's what I'd done since I was 2 years old. And, you kind of just
Yeah.
like take this thing away that you've been doing your whole life, as a 15-year-old, your whole life at that point. But it almost felt like for my own health and well being, I had to keep
Yeah.
learning about this stuff because I didn't want to feel sick anymore. I didn't want to feel like anything I ate felt so sensitive. I didn't want to be in pain, so that also kind of just opened me up to different things. And I didn't even realize I was talking about it all the time. It was my friends and coworkers who were like, maybe you should do this all the time. Like you're always, in the middle of a conversation, oh, did you know this? Did you know that? Did you know if you do this, this might help? And so they were actually the ones who told me I should do it. Again, I was walking around here clueless. I was just like, oh, this is just cool to learn about and talk about.
It's a great story as to how one's progression happens. And all of you guys that are listening to us, the journey is not a pretty one linear thing. It is a messy trip, if you will. And I use the example many, many times of a plane flying into its destination, and that destination is locked in. That plane's route is never a linear route. There's this thing called turbulence, and there's several different types of turbulence that comes to that plane depending on where it's heading, and some of it is sudden onset, just like life. It's just like life. And you being the pilot, you have to have your compass, your North Star that is there. And sometimes we are aware of it, but the North Star is there and it's moving inside of us, and sometimes we're not aware of it. As Catherine is telling me, her friends were aware of it, but she wasn't. But it was there. And that North Star and all the turbulence that comes into our life, the different types of turbulence that comes into that plane, we as the captain we have to learn, and we become skillful as we continue our journey. That people expect it to be a linear thing. It is not. It's messy, it's beautiful, it's up, it's down, sideways, backwards, all over the damn place. But the purpose is there. And once you hang on to your North Star, you will find your way, and you're going to land on this runway, and you're going to start enjoying your vacation, as they say. So here you are. You are in this place and you're hanging out, and life is just giving you all kinds of lessons. Started young, brain tumor. I mean, here you are, the whole gamut of wonderful news. If someone doesn't understand some things, all these great things that are coming to you. Perspective is everything, guys. I keep telling you, how you look at your situation will determine how long you stay in your situation. Write that down and meditate on it. How you look at your situation will determine how long you stay there. Once you begin to switch your perspective, it's just a simple switch because of your belief system. You believe this way for years. I want to challenge you to create a new mind map, if you will. Start looking at the good things that is in there. It's staring in your face. You just don't know because you've been focusing on the bad things for so long. Start looking at the good things, the reasons why, the good things, and it'll switch your perspective, and the pain that you're in will no longer be painful because it disappeared because your perspective has changed. Try it, it'll change your life. So here you are. I mean, what a group of things are coming to you. You went into study, talk to us about the brain tumor piece, because that presents a different sets of challenge here, because it's outside of your control, but yet you have to learn how to manage that, how you have to learn how to be one that now is going to take the reins, if you will. When you received the news, what was your first reaction? And then as you began to come off of the floor and off of your knees, what was your continued pursuit? How did you pursue dealing with that?
So I had wondered for a while. There had also been a long string of headaches, and they'd started to get more frequent. And I started having little episodes that I couldn't explain, which we came to find out later were focal seizures. So I felt validated when I got the news, but also, shoot, I actually have a brain tumor. Um, and I feel like when people talk
Yeah.
about brain tumors, it's like nobody really, people talk about cancer and other conditions, and those are very scary. Those are very scary diagnoses. I just felt like sometimes when I told people tumor, brain tumor, it just almost felt like everybody immediately, jumped to like the worst conclusion, or we're just so scared
Yeah.
because it feels as if a lot of people don't know somebody who's had one. And mine was benign. It was cutting off my communication abilities. So the risk was that if they were not able to remove it fully or accidentally removed that part of my brain, it would affect my speech, or I would lose the ability to speak. I think because I was scared, and for the sake of other people around me who were scared, I felt like I kind of had to be really strong. And they told me, you're going to have an awake craniotomy in 3 weeks, which already was like, what? No, I'm not. And I finally I tell people I had to sit and have a talk with God because, like you said, it's so out of your control. And realizing that,
Yeah.
with the seizures and with everything that's going on, I literally had no control. I could not say no, right? I could not control the seizures if they were happening. I could not control what's happening, when they put me on anti-seizure medication. Like, it was making me so fatigued, and it just, it felt like everything changed so quickly. It just felt like this whirlwind. And I remember saying to God, okay, there's nothing I can do to stop any of this. There's nothing I can do to take the reins. I literally just have to turn it over to you, and wherever you want this to go, I'll go. And it felt like that was the best way for me to take control, was to let go of control. And it gave me peace. I mean, I was still scared. Nobody wants to wake up on
Mm-hmm.
an operating table with their head open, but it felt like, okay, I don't have to put such a high expectation on myself to hold it all together, or to, try to orchestrate things in the background. It was basically just, we're going to go with the flow, and we're going to pray, and we're going to trust that no matter what happens, it'll still be for my best, you know. And I will say it was probably the best decision for me to do at the time, because it just made it a little bit easier. It was still hard, but it made it easier, to lean on other people, to
Mm-hmm.
lean on God, to lean on my faith, to lean on, the surgeons who do this often. And, I should trust them, and, to
Yeah.
ask for help and support, from my parents. And it was, again, still hard. The recovery phase was still hard, because emotionally, it's not just the physical, it's also the emotional of, oh my gosh, I actually went through that. And I've been through something that basically nobody around me can go through, and I don't know how to relate to them, but everyone expects you, to just be back to yourself. And you're not yourself after you go through that
Yeah.
experience. Like, you're
You
not
can't
yourself
be.
after the diagnosis. Yeah, you can't be. And I'm grateful for that, because I tell
Yeah.
people I like this new version of me. But it still was like these
Yeah.
changes that I was having to navigate for probably close to like a year. And I felt like on my own, that were just difficult to explain to people, because again, they look at me and they say, oh, you look great, you look the same. But inside you're like, oh no, I'm a whole new person. I have a whole new perspective on life. Yet again, God is calling me to pursue something else, something bigger, something more meaningful and purposeful. Because to me, you don't go through something like that and not have a deeper sense of what you're put on this earth to do.
Yeah, one must find your purpose to become purposeful. And what a person to lean on, if you will, to have God on your side, and as one that you're leaning on and leaning in and trusting to provide and to heal and all the other things. I mean, he said, just give it to me. I'll deal with it with you. I'll walk with you. And that's one of the things that
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
people don't understand. He said, I'll walk with you. Even though you're in the fire, it's not going to burn you. Even though you're in the river, it's not going to overflow. So he's there inside the mix with you. And,
Yes.
it's a safe space. Surrendering to him was wisdom in many ways. And because, as I said, there's a scripture that talks about entering into the rest of God. And to me, that means that when we get into that space and we're walking by faith, we turn it over to Him, and there's a rest that is there, that we no longer pick it up. We just turn it over, and there's that peace that passeth all understanding, as they say, is able to
Yes.
uh, help us and guide us and move us through. And within that peace is where we find the rest that the Bible talks about in Hebrews, finding the rest in God's,
Yes.
and so it tells us to labor to get there. And so, as you are now, have you gone through that, and God has ushered you into this space where you are able to become a servant? Talk to us as to when He began to move you forward, because none of us go through any of our situations and not being used. God would be, it would be, a bad plan, if you will. When you began to see the vision of God's using you begin to crystallize in your mind, how did you receive it first, and how did you begin to walk in it?
Yeah. So I think one, going through that experience with the surgery was, I think,
Yeah.
such a test of my faith, and as you said, kind of walking through this, because I couldn't take the shortcut around, right? I couldn't like jump through something. I had to go through it. So I think, one, recognizing my strength, my resilience, but that was also after that, shortly after my surgery was when I first had Reiki, and I was just so intrigued by the practice. So my mom and I did our level 1 and level 2 training together. Feeling how impactful it was, I said, "Oh, I would love to do this for other people, to give back to people in the hospital, like I had been through." And just so happened that where I did my training through, one of the teachers mentioned that there was a volunteer program for Reiki at the hospital I actually had my surgery at. And I started to volunteer there, and that's where I met Mara Benner. So she works at Four Directions Wellness, and then later on asked me to come work with her at the studio doing Reiki. But that volunteer experience, I still tell people, is one of the best experiences of my life. I don't think I ever felt like more purposeful, like just being able to be with people and help them, and kind of in this way where you never know what's going to happen in a Reiki session, but you're always trusting, right? As you talked about earlier, intention, that our intention is for the person's highest and greatest good, and just seeing what comes of that and through that. And to be on every single floor, be able to work on every single floor in the hospital, and to be with people sometimes at the worst moment in their life, right? A very difficult experience in their life, and to be able to offer care and compassion and hold space for them. Whether it's that they need rest, whether it's that they need pain relief, right? Maybe I remember there was this one patient I worked with who was in the ICU, there were all these tubes everywhere, and just
Mm.
wanted me to hold their hand. And I think, sometimes we forget that something as small as just holding somebody's hand in a really tough moment can make the world of difference, right? Because we are meant to be in connection with people, right? We cannot do this alone. And so that for me just felt like this is why I had to go through all of that. I don't think I would have had that same perspective or that same desire to do this work if it hadn't been where I was in that same place as, people that I would then be working on a few years down the line. And it also really just showed me like these practices really work. Reiki can be such a powerful thing and such a powerful complement to Western medicine, in all the different ways that we were, again, able to help not only even the patients, but also their family members, and even staff. Staff are working, around the clock. They're also seeing this tough stuff, and they also kind of have to put on this strong face, right, and hold space for other people. And they also need that relaxation, right? They need that calm. Family members, as caregivers, that is such a tough job, and oftentimes they're kind of forgotten about, but they too deserve that as well. So yeah, it really just made me move from a place of, even if I was tired, even if I'd been working at my 9 to 5 all day, maybe my brain was thinking, oh, it'd be much better for me to just go home, and lay on my couch. I still felt so much better when I went to that hospital and was there for a couple hours in my evening. I left feeling like I'm doing what I was called to do.
And for all of your listeners, we're going to provide all of her links and everything for you guys to get access to her. And I suggest that you do and get to move through all of your pain. And Catherine, I just want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. You have a powerful story, and we will do whatever we can to support you on our end. And the listeners as well, I tell them to get into her space so that you can show them who they are and help them move through. Reiki is a powerful tool by which we can do that, and it's done over distance and all of that stuff. But we're going to provide you guys her stuff. Catherine, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I deeply appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was wonderful being in conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.